everyone, my name's Flora Tennant. I am a film writer and director. My mum, Andrea, loves Viking cruises, so it's really nice to be sharing this with you all. I'm travelling to Moray in northeast Scotland to my family home, Loch Na Bo, which is a house on a loch, Scottish term for lake. I made it! Okay, this noise always reminds me of being... that cattle grid noise always reminds me of being home. And here we are! I know some of you watching will be visiting Scotland later in the year with Viking, so it's a joy for me to provide you with a taste. So I am staying in my mum's room, as there are already sheets on the bed and we have a rental in a few days. And here's the room in my most recent short film. This was the room that used to be my granny's. Now it's my mama's. This is the coats room / boot room. The family's coats and boots are mostly put away, as we'll have people staying here. We've put in a wood-burning stove, as you can see there. But I've come in here to get my coats, and whenever I stay at Loch Na Bo, I wear Grandpa's old shooting jacket, which features the Tennant tartan. Because I was doing the film, and it's hard not to anyway, I would go out on the loch on a rowing boat and walk around the loch and think about how this was going to be incorporated into what I was creating. I always knew I wanted to shoot a film at beautiful Loch Na Bo, and through spending time up there writing the film and then in pre-production, I developed an incredible community of people brought to me by the power of filmmaking. Looks like there might be a cloud rolling in. See the swans on the loch. Despite not having grown up here in the typical sense, together with my mum, Andrea, and my brother Andrew, by spending time here, we are creating our own relationship with the place, and in doing so, continuing our family's history as well as forging our own. And for me, this was enabled through filmmaking.
Well, Loch Na Bo was, we could never find, Syrian could never find when it was really built. But I think it was built by the Duke of Gordon, I'm never sure. And it was at that time called a lodge rather than the house it is now. And the loch, of course, was the last watering hole that they used when they drove cattle to market in Elgin. Before it was a loch, when it was just a swamp, And Loch Na Bo means Loch of the Cows. And it is I stayed at the head of the loch, and Kinloch, my name, it means in Gaelic, the head of the loch, apparently. During the Second World War, the house was used for the army there. The officers stayed in the main house, and the soldiers were all billeted out in huts in the wood. The soldiers used to go into town, and they would pinch a bike to get home. And when they came home, they would throw them in the loch, to get rid of them, so that they weren't.
So allegedly there are loads of bikes just sitting on the bottom.
I can't remember it, whether it was in the 1990s, that we had to have the loch drained because the fish were dying off. And it was then that there was a lot of bikes and there was a rifle, a gun found, which the soldiers had thrown into the loch then as well. I still miss Loch Na Bo, I really do. And with very happy times there, with all the comings and goings, and especially when the shooting was on, we had loads of guests then. It was a very busy place. It's till Serene and Lady Margaret became, elderly and weren't able to entertain the same and that. Yeah, it was really lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed looking after the place. Keeping it tidy, and the Serene always said we looked after it as if it was our own, which was perfectly true, because we lived there and it was our job and we took a pride in our work. We really did.
Despite not having grown up here in the typical sense, and also now being based in Los Angeles, coming here to my family's home does feel like home. And that's because of the relationship that I've formed with the place and the people of the community because of filmmaking. Why would you choose to stay here and live here? What is it about this area that is specifically relevant to what you do?
Oh, Murray is just a great place to live, not really because of the wildlife, but
Great,
also
that's the best answer.
It's a lovely community. We're not overrun, we have plenty of room, we have nice little towns where you can park in the middle of the street. But on top of that, for a naturalist, we've got this low ground, and very quickly we can drive inland to the mountains. And then we could equally drive just 10 miles to the coast. And we have superb estuaries like Findhorn Bay, full of waders and wildfowl. And then the open exposed coasts out on the big sand dune areas. And a further to the east, we have small colonies of seabirds breeding on the cliffs. So Murray is a really good county. But I never like to say too much because I just don't like increasing numbers of people.
We're so in a nice local area that we can go and get fish, we can go and get our meat. And everything's so local and fresh up here. We bought it right at our doorstep in Scotland here. We've got everything here, isn't it?
We really
we're very
do.
lucky.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm here with Xander. Xander is a neighbour of mine. He lives at a place called Orton, and it is on this beautiful river where they do lots of fishing. So we're at the fishing hut now. Very nice setup they've got here. We're just
this is where the guests come when they stay in one of the holiday cottages up here, and then they usually use 6 rods, and they come and use these huts to base themselves from in the daytime when they're fishing down here. And there's 2 gillies that look after them.
So what's a gilly?
The gilly is, I think it originates, it's a Gaelic word, I think, that originates from someone who looks after you either stalking out on the hill or on the river. The 2 gillies here are called Andy and Phil, great lads, who dedicate their lives to this.
And have you kind of grown up with Andy and Phil?
So they're actually quite new to the place, but before that we had one gilly who was here for 18 years, who I grew up with, and one 8 years before that. So Andy and Phil are pretty new to the team, but absolutely great people and love fishing.
Yeah.
As you can probably.
So they're like the fishing experts. So for example, like if you had never fished before, would you be able to come to Orton and take a boat out, or do you have to have some previous experience?
So it's the quickest river in Britain. So you need, because it's got the steepest descent.
Well, yeah, we can see the water's moving pretty fast there.
Parts it goes at 14 metres a second. And so you need someone with you really, unless you're particularly experienced.
So that's where a gilly would come in. That's where
they really come into their own.
This is Alter Estate. It's 13,500 acre estate in northeast Scotland. Mixed forestry farm. We have a 350 herd suckler herd, Aberdeen Angus. A little shoot. a few other little businesses on the place. There's a huge spirit of cooperation in the and especially I find in the sort of younger generation, my age group. There are a few of us now up here that are sort of, you know, sub 35 who are taking over, and it's a minefield, and we all have to be here to help each other.
I took over here about 2 years ago, and it's a mixture of things. Feel very lucky to look after it, and to sort of hopefully steward it for people to enjoy. And it's a mixture of a bit of farmland, a bit of woodland. The river is sort of the main artery of the place, which we're all incredibly fond of. And so we have a farm which grows barley, and there's cattle here that are farmed, and sheep, especially in the winter. And the barley that we grow is then grown and fed into the distilleries around here, which there's a high concentration of distilleries around here. 44 out of the total of 88 in Scotland are all on Speyside.
And that's whiskey distilleries.
That's whiskey distilleries, yeah. The Spey is quite unique in the sense it's one of the only rivers in Britain that flows north. Most flow south, east and west.
Interesting.
So yeah, the Speyside distilleries got their name because they used to take the water from the burns that used to flow into the Spey, and it just became an area that was particularly attractive for whiskey people, and was the heart of the industry at the time, and still is. So yeah, the farm is one main bit here, and then we have some holiday cottages that we let out to either fishing guests or people that want to come and explore Moray and see all the sights here, because we're only 6-7 miles from the sea, so there's lots to do. And then there's obviously the fishing, which has a lot of history to it and has been a big part of Speyside again, for the sheer amount of salmon that come up the river, the elusive Atlantic salmon that everyone looks for. So the Pacific salmon are from the northwest of America and Canada, and the Atlantic salmon all feed in the Atlantic Ocean and then come into rivers in bodies, well, mostly in the UK, Norway, Russia and Iceland are the main places for that. And the reason that they're so elusive and so sought after is, I suppose, before that, when people were used to eat all the fish, smoked salmon is a huge delicacy. But I think from the perspective of a fisherman, what they really, really find exciting about it is that when the salmon's in the river, unlike other fish, they're not feeding. So they do all their feeding at sea. So no one really knows when you cast a fly why it takes the fly. And so that creates even more of an illusion to people and an attraction, because a lot of it, although you can be as good at casting as you want, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a fish. So there's a lot of unknowns within it, and I think that's what lures people in and keeps them coming back for years and years.
Beautiful. Have you lived in Elgin your whole life?
Yes, I was born in Elgin in 1956, the 1st of February, and my mum and dad are local. In fact, my mum grew up in this house.
Oh, no way.
And my granny allowed me to purchase it. And so I've actually been here 27 years yesterday.
Wow. Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, 27 years on the 1st of January 1995. My mum came in here when she was 2 in the Elgin holiday. It was a new build. It was the April Elgin holiday in 1934. So,
and what is it about Moray that you love, and why did you just decide to stay around here?
well, I love the community spirit. I'm still very friendly with friends from I was 2 years old. They were actually here yesterday for a New Year's Day
dram. Could you explain what a dram is?
Well, a dram would be normally whiskey, but we actually didn't have whiskey, but and we're actually living in Whiskey Land within a 22-mile radius. There's maybe 70 distilleries, and Macallan, Glenfarclas, Benromac, Glenfiddich up at Dufton, and through the summer we have whiskey festivals and people come from all over the world, and there's actually
bottles of whiskies that can go for £100,000.
What is it about Scotland that's kind of like made you stay, and why do you love living here?
Obviously living here is like, we've got everything here. And I just think it's healthier here. I have lived in Germany, I lived in Edinburgh as well, but the further north you go, you've got the views, you've got lots of things here. You've got loads of things that people say there's not a lot to do, but if you see the scenery, you see the fresh air, you see how healthy you can be, this is where this is where I will stay. Definitely, yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, me too. I don't know, it's just interesting. I've just been finding this place more and more home the more I come up here, and have really established like my own relationship with the place. And you kind of just get addicted to this, as you were saying, like the open space and the air and just the feeling. And everyone that I've talked to has always noted this aspect of community. Do you feel like you have a real strong community up here?
We have. We community, especially, it doesn't matter what area around about the Murray area, even the Highlands as well, because I bathed up there. It's totally, everybody looks after everybody, and we just go together. It's not just a family thing. I know I speak about my family because we're a big family, but we have a big family with the whole street. It's not just next door, it's like the whole street. You can go out and parties and things. It was great, absolutely great.
Sweet.
It still is.
I love haggis. Oh yes, there's nothing to beat a haggis, a burnt supper, and all the toasts, and yeah, it's just lovely. It's made from pinhead oatmeal, liver, and just the offal of a sheep. You know, I'm sure it's a sheep.
Yeah, and then and can you explain what neeps and tassies are?
Potatoes and turnips.
And are they prepared in any specific way?
No, just boiled and mashed for the tatties, and in the same with the turnips. Add a good bit of black pepper to your turnips.
What is your real opinion on haggis? I have to ask.
I love haggis.
Me too, I flipping love it so much.
So there is so many different haggis, but we eat haggis all year round. It's not just a tradition.
So you do eat it year round, yeah?
We do, yeah. There's people who have haggis in the morning, like a wee round bit of haggis with their black pudding, bacon and egg and everything. That's a tradition for Scotland as well.
Or like also if you like go to a restaurant, you can sometimes get like haggis bonbons as like a starter as well, or something like that.
And they're nice as well.
So good, I love them.
The haggis with a whiskey sauce, it's lovely.
With a whiskey sauce, okay.
Whiskey sauce, and do that with veg and stuff, it's lovely.
So I will be having tatties with my haggis. So this is what the haggis looks like. It is truly the most delicious thing you can have. It's a very soft, delicate meat, very moist and juicy with lots of flavours. I also had tatties, quite lumpy mashed potatoes they were. And I sat in the dining room, which I love this room. And even though it seems like I had supper on my own, I was actually in great company with Granny, right there, Margaret, Granny again, Margaret, Andrew, my brother, there's me, yours truly, Grandpa, Ian, my dad, Christopher, and Grandpa behind me as well. And what about smoked salmon? Is that actually a Scottish thing?
Oh yes, smoked salmon's a Scottish thing.
Do you like smoked salmon?
Yes, I had smoked salmon this morning with scrambled egg. Yesterday morning to my breakfast.
And what about kippers?
Oh yes, I like kippers.
I love kippers.
Kippers is a herring. Silver darlings as they're called, the herring. And it is smoked to make and it is then a kipper. And of course, Rosemary and Alison were in the fish counter scene in the film.
Hi. Hey, can I get a kipper, please? Undyed.
Undyed.
And okay, so obviously we're in like whiskey country where we are, the northeast part of Scotland and Moray. Are you into whiskey? Do you know much about whiskey? Did you grow up with it?
Well, Shibis Regal, that's actually in Keith. There's Grants. There is a few places that I have seen, but I'm not a whiskey drinker. I know the difference between the whiskies and the malts. The malt's a lot smoother for you to drink. There is a lot of distilleries round about this area. Obviously, my dad used to deliver. Actually, he drove the tank with the whiskey and things, and of course we didn't really like the smell of things, so that was just
Maybe
like,
that put you off actually subconsciously.
Yeah, so there is a difference. There's a malt which actually gives you the nice pure, easier taste. You can drink them straight. With whiskey, like Famous Grouse.
Yeah, and the smell of the distillery is so distinct. It almost smells like
yeast.
Yeah, it's like bready. It almost smells like bread if you're around a distillery.
Yeast smell. That's right.
Like,
Go up. Hold on. I have. You can have this box.
Yeah.
I have a box I left it. Okay. And I have left. You can have it, dear.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure?
You can have that.
Wow. So what's what? Which is the Scottish? Which is
There's the fudge. That's the fudge.
That one's the fudge, and which is the tablet?
That's the macaroon, and that's the tablet.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the paper.
Are you sure I can have this?
Of course you can. That's I was going to give it to the postie, but the postie will get pennies instead.
Thank you. So this is fudge. This one's for me. Thank you, Rosemary, so much.
Raisin fudge.
So this one's tablet, Rosemary, and what is tablet?
Swiss milk tablet. It's made with condensed milk
Condensed milk.
and sugar.
And it's a Scottish speciality.
Well, it's a Scottish WRI recipe. It's the Scottish Women's Rural Institute.
For me, the pipes were always really special, not because they were stereotypically Scottish, but members of my family played the pipes and they were played at special occasions or family gatherings, the ones that we attended. So for me, the pipes always take me home.
There's nothing finer than seeing a pipe band march down the street or whatever, a field where they're holding Highland Games or anything. It's just lovely.
And this led me to meet the Elgin and District Pipe Band, and specifically Kenzie, a member of the pipe band.
And what's the process of learning how to play the bagpipes?
Well, first you need to start on the chanter.
And what's a chanter?
It's basically the pipes without the bag and the drones. And they help tune the pipes.
Okay, and are they the long things that stick out the back?
Yeah.
Okay, and so then once you've learned the chanter, so the chanter is for finger work, right?
Yeah, the fingers in the mouth.
Okay, and then once you've learned the chanter, do you progress to the actual bagpipes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then in terms of, is there like hierarchy within isn't there some kind of hierarchy within the band? Like, I don't know, there's like a lead, there's the pipe master or something? Could you talk about it? Pipe major. And what does a pipe major do?
He leads the band into if we're doing a competition, and he also leads it at practice as well.
Okay, so he's kind of like the conductor in a way. And then, so obviously to play the pipes, you're constantly breathing into the bag. Do you get quite out of breath? Is there a breathing technique that you need to employ?
Well, yeah, every time you need to take a breath, you normally squeeze the bag. So you're not constantly doing it. It's kind of a rhythm.
I see. And I always see pipers like tapping their foot. What's the story? Is that just to keep rhythm?
Yeah, to keep the beat going.
Yeah. Okay, so these are Kenzie's kilts. So this one is the pipe band one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that from the film. When would you wear this?
If someone contacted me out of the pipe band asking me to do something, I'd most likely wear this one.
Okay, to play the pipes. Okay, and then would you ever wear them like for special, like when else if you weren't playing the pipes would you wear a kilt?
Normally at a wedding or a Burns Day.
And then at a wedding, do people wear their own kilts or like do they have to wear like the family kilts?
Well, I'm pretty sure people hosting the wedding would normally pick a tartan, and then the people would hire out a kilt with that colour.
Okay, I see. And so it's not necessarily like a family's like surname. It's more just kind of what you prefer.
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh, that's something I never knew. That's so nice. So just as Kenzie showed us his kilts, I have cracked open my grandpa's closet, which is now my brother's room, this room. And this is one of our Tennant tartans. I believe this is the evening one, or it could be the day, I'm not sure. But this is the one that I wear. And then we have another Tennant tartan here. This looks like quite a long one, quite a big one. Another kilt there. These were Granny's skirts that she used to wear, tweed and stuff. And let's see what else we have back here. Oh, yeah, so this is the other version of the tartan. I'm not sure, again, which is evening and which is day. Dancing then, when I was younger, was like the Highland Fling or Paddy Bar. That's all the Scottish music. Okay. So you had to do like, oh, I'm not joking, dance across a sword and things and that. You would kill things and stuff. Yeah. That's kind of things that we used to do. So it was really good.
Much like the pipes, reeling, which is Scottish dancing, is something that I have continued to latch onto and champion. And you can see me there attempting to teach some friends over New Year.
Very proud to be Scottish, I can tell you. And I like all the cultures that we have in Scotland, you know.
Like what specifically?
Well, just the way we speak and you know, just the beautiful countryside it is. And look how we have all the whisky distilleries on Speyside. And, you know, it's just a nice area to be around.
Others I got to know were neighbours Xander and Will, and Roy, a birdwatcher who frequents the loch.
I run a small softwood thinnings company. We specialise in small roundwoods, low impact forestry.
So do you kind of work with those around you on becoming more ecologically focused and environmentally friendly?
Absolutely. As a startup, we have an opportunity to tailor the direction of the company in any way we want to. We've spent quite a lot of time working out how we can make this company as sustainable. I mean, the product we produce as sustainable as possible. We are working with low weight, low power machines to use the minimal amount of fuel. Part of the business is a management side as well, and we offer lots of management plans focused around carbon capture, focused around ecology increase. We're tarred with this big blank brush called deforestation. That's not what we do here. This is sustainable practice. This is a 30-year cycle crop, just like barley, just like wheat, apart from that's yearly, and this is on a longer cycle. If you look around your house at home, everything you see is made of wood. So this process is essential.
There's 5 boats here that you can go out in with the gillies if you want to get further out into the pools to get over closer to the fish. And the gillies, that is all by oar power, just by hand. No motorized power.
Is that because it's not allowed, or it's just like you can't fish with a motor, or like what's the reasoning behind that?
It's because it's not allowed. Because they don't want any fumes going and polluting the water in the river.
Love that.
Which is obviously ties in quite nicely with the current trends of looking after the planet a bit more. So I think it will stay like that, which is great. And it means that there's no noise, and it keeps it peaceful, which is pretty key. The life cycle of the salmon is pretty crazy, in a good way. So they're born in the river here,
and this is the fish.
This is the fish. Yeah, this is the main fish. Sorry, I should have that clear. So they're born in little gravel pits behind rocks where it's slightly more sheltered, and the female salmon puts out eggs, which then are hatched and eventually turn to small little fish called parr, who live in the river for 1 to 2 years. And then at that stage, they're called, once they've been feeding a little bit in the river, but not very much, to be honest, and they've done quite a lot of growing, and then they turn into something called a smolt. And when they're usually about 2, they head out to sea. So they go all the way back downriver and out to sea, and usually circle around Greenland, where most of the feeding for the salmon is, which is a huge journey. And they're there they'll spend either 1, 2, 3, 4 years out at sea. And in this time they grow a huge amount. And when they decide it's time to come back, they'll either come back after 1 year, which is when they're called, and they come back into the river and they're called grilse. And then after 2 or 3, 4, then they get the title of a salmon.
Yeah.
And they come back into the river, and often the same pool and the same rock that they were born in, to come and breed themselves. And it's a pretty amazing life cycle to be able to have that sense of geography, to be able to leave one place, travel thousands of miles, and find your way back to the same rock that you were born under, to then have your own children.
Yeah, amazing.
So this year there was lots of water coming down the river in the spring, which means that lots more salmon come up it, because it's safe, because they know that they're not going to be stranded. And so they went their way up the stream, but they were all coming through Orton, so that not many were caught at the start of the season. But once the river dropped again, and the fish started settling in the pools, that's when it becomes really exciting for the fishermen, because they've got then hundreds and hundreds of fish that potentially want to take their fly, and it's a really, really exciting feeling.
I'm a conservationist, or a field ornithologist.
And what does that mean exactly?
That means that I've studied and worked on the conservation of birds all my life, but also it kind of grew into being more about the whole ecosystem and all wildlife. So you could call me an ecologist, or various names, but my interest is in the restoration of nature, and making certain that nature is well looked after.
I see. And why is Loch Na Bo a point of interest for you?
Loch Na Bo is what we call one of these low ground lochs. So although it's surrounded by mature trees, it's within an agricultural landscape coming down to the coast in Moray. And what's particular here is that the ducks that live here during the day go out on the fields at night to feed. The hooper swans from Iceland, which have been feeding on the spent barley during the day, and the greylag geese, come into Loch Na Bo to roost at night. So there's movement all the time. But when I look at Loch Na Bo, I also remember that, January the 2nd, and in summertime, the ospreys that I study and kind of protect in this area occasionally come here to hunt for fish, for trout. And today, they will be hunting for fish on the coast of West Africa. They go to Senegal, Mauritania, the Gambia. And some of the ospreys that hunt here belong to a kind of little subpopulation of about 10 pairs that live in eastern Moray, which I've studied right back until the 70s. And some of those young birds are ones that we've taken down to England to restore populations, both in England and also in France, in Spain and Switzerland.
So what are we looking at here? You've set up what is this, a telescope?
Well, today, what I'm looking at are wintering birds like often duck and mallard and teal and widgeon, which are common. And there's a lot of gulls here. These gulls nowadays feed on pig farms. When I was younger, I would go to the estuaries and to the fishing harbours like Lossiemouth, and the herring gulls and greater blackback gulls would be feeding around the fishing boat. There's no fish now, and so they come into these pig farms, which are really mucky, and then they fly onto places like Loch Na Bo, to wash and have a drink. And so they're all out there, and us bird watchers, we look through these flocks because every now and then we find a bird called an Iceland gull, which to anyone else just looks like a gull, but it doesn't have black wingtips, and they breed in Iceland and Greenland. And so we see some of them at these pig farms. Yeah, this book came out in the summer with Collins. It's called Restoring the Wild. And it's only now that I'm 80 that I've had time to kind of settle down and write things up. And this is a first-hand, 60 years of rewilding. So often we've destroyed, kind of forests, and native forests have gone, and landscapes have changed, agriculture has intensified, huge amounts of chemicals have been used since the last war. So, nature is pretty hammered. And so what we're talking about is what we've done about that. And it's a series of chapters of the different birds and animals that I've worked on in my life with other people, and how successful or not we've been. And some, the white-tailed eagle has been very successful, and we've even recently moved them to southern England from northern Scotland.
And how do you do that? What does that mean, or what does that entail when you say you've
Some of
moved
it,
a species of bird?
It's all hard work, and you need to have knowledge and experience. But with something like osprey, white-tailed eagle and red kite, what we do is we remove one young one from a nest, leaving the other young one there. We take them maybe 500 miles or more, and we rear them in little families. We feed them, and then we release them, and we continue to feed them without them seeing us, so that we're surrogate parents, but they never see us. And where we let them go then becomes their home. And when they're finally mature, they breed there.
Loch Na Bo means to me a sense of belonging, which was fostered and brought out and realised, I suppose, through filmmaking, my passion and dream. This feels like coming home. It's 4:15 in the morning here in the kitchen. I'm about to leave. I am on the first flight out. George, who is a manager up here, will be staying next, coming up to do some work before our next set of rentals. So I thought I'd leave him a note. And also, he's vegetarian. That's my taxi outside. Bye, Great Granny.